evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here in the last Hacknight of 2023. Civic Tech has just been a fabulous organization. I think I presented here the last time about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, and I had the idea of noise in our city and how it impacts our health. And this has been the place where it has grown and developed. And I'm just really, really thankful for that. So tonight we're going to kind of go over what we've achieved over the last couple of years, and it's going to be interactive as well. So I'm going to start off with thanking Civic Tech once again. So this is a collaborative grassroots effort. It's called No More Noise Toronto, and I'm the founder of this group. And it basically started by getting woken up by motorcycles at 3:30 in the morning on the roads, and it just felt very unfair. So I'm collaborating with Civic Tech, Toronto Metropolitan University. I collaborate with Professor Tor Oyamo, who's a health expert on noise and urban noise. University of Toronto, you're going to meet a senior geography student tonight who is getting work experience with me. Hot Docs and Citizen Minutes was just this bonus that actually started from Civic Tech. Literally all of these threads wind back to this group because I did a breakout session. Somebody came, their father mentioned to me about a group called Public Spaces. That was Dave Meslin. Kat Mills was the director, and she wanted me to do a hot doc on noise. And so that is now out. It's streaming on CBC Gem, and it's an 8-minute quirky, fun video of noise. Esri Canada, many of you guys would know that because you're a mapper, or many of you are mappers, but they've also come along and helped me with some of my geospatial analysis. And I'm working with residents associations, residents of Toronto, elected officials, and the city of Toronto to create a better soundscape for our city. So, interactive. I want to know, I like data and I like getting feedback. So I like doing mentees. So you can use the QR code or go to menti.com, type in that code, and then you'll be able to give me some responses. So one of the questions I'm going to ask you at the end is, what do you want Toronto to sound like? So for you people online, you can do this as well. All these answers will show up. So a little something to think about. What do you want Toronto to sound like when I ask that question? So I'm going to move along, and I'm going to give you a definition of sound or noise, which is unwanted and or harmful sound. So many of us think, oh, we'll get used to it. The answer is no, we don't. And even if we don't realize that it is bothering us, it is actually harming our bodies. At 55 decibels, our bodies are responding to sound because it has both an audio property and a physical property. And so this harmful definition just got put in last year. So it's not just unwanted, it's also harmful. So first question, how often are you annoyed while you're trying to rest and relax? Rarely, which might be like once a week, occasionally, a couple times, maybe once a day, frequently, maybe a few times a day, often, many times a day. And there we go. I hope people online are also participating here. So we've got occasionallys, frequently, rarely, often, 11, lots of occasionallys here. Okay. Initially, I had often as almost all the time, which was me, but then I realized I had to dial that back a little bit. That might have been a bit of an emotional response. Okay, so we've got 12 occasionallys, 3 oftens, 6 frequentlys, and 3 rarelys. I want to live where those rarelys are living. Okay, so why is noise important? Well, noise, our cities basically were designed from car culture. And I just listened to a podcast for the last 100 years, we've been building our cities for cars, which means that our urban design has been made for throughput of cars and not for our cities to sound good, but to look good. And so we've got concrete walls, we've got glass that bounces the sound all over the place and makes it really loud. And our urban design has also not been an equitable design. In the hot doc, I feature Daniela Levy-Pinto, who's a pedestrian advocate who's blind. And her words for navigating the city is she's terrified. And can you imagine walking through the city with your eyes closed? No, thank you. And when she has a cement truck that's spinning at 80 decibels, one of those diesel cement trucks spinning, she can't hear anything. She can't make sense of anything. So I think we really need to look at noise from an equity lens as well. Those most marginalized tend to live on the loudest streets. So that is also another aspect. Climate, people are going, well, how is noise and climate related? Well, I have a balcony. I don't use it because it's so noisy out there. I cannot open my windows at night to get fresh air, so air conditioning comes on. We are forced inside. We are forced out of our public spaces and into our homes. And the other thing is when those vehicles have modified mufflers, have you walked by one of those lately? It stinks. You absolutely know that they have circumvented the emission controls that were intended for that vehicle. So how does this then impact our health? In many ways. Noise impacts our health through sleep disturbance. I have that just about every night. I try and sleep with white noise, but the motorcycle hum still comes through. Cardiovascular effects. It can actually, so what noise does is it causes a stress response in our bodies that causes our arteries to thicken. That can cause heart attacks, that can cause strokes. It can also, there's psychophysiological effects, reduced performance. Everybody knows what it feels like when you haven't had a good sleep and you wake up the next day, you're dragging. Nobody wants that. Provoked annoyance. When I go to people's homes and I measure, and they're like, Ingrid, I'm so angry. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And it's because we have no control. We have no control when somebody is emitting sound into our private and public spaces. So annoyance. I am not going to unmute myself. And so changes in social behavior. Noise has been shown to prove, depression and anxiety. And reduce cognitive impairment or cognitive impairment in children. For children, especially when they're trying to learn, having constant noise and interruptions is very difficult for them. And sometimes if they haven't, if this goes on for too long, those impacts are non-reversible. They travel through the lifespan of that person. So we are lucky in Toronto. Many cities have outdated noise bylaws, and thankfully, ours are actually under review right now, which is why this has been such just a golden opportunity. So the last major review of our bylaws was in 2002, 20 years ago. Our soundscape was much different back then, and our cities were much different from then. Our cities are now taller, we're denser, we have many more people in a much tighter place. So in 2015, they started to review this. Dr. Tor Oyama was the lead researcher on a Toronto Public Health report called How Loud is Too Loud? Then pandemic kind of held things up a little bit. This September and October, the city held public consultations. Over 750 people attended those public consultations, which is a big number. I did my part to make sure that lots of people got out. And then the other thing that we did was we actually did email templates, and we basically made it really easy for people to send feedback to the city, and the city got over 2,200 emails. Which is also significant. But that's not just me, that actually just goes to show how many people are frustrated from sound and noise in their environment. Now, because of all that feedback, initially the meeting was supposed to be November 28th. It's now been punted to January 11th. So that is when the noise agenda will be on the Economic and Community Development Committee agenda. And so what they do is they have a whole bunch of agenda items that day. Noise will be one of them. And that is when people can actually get up and share their story with the city, with the elected officials. They can say, noise bothers me here, or it's this kind of noise. They can share that. And they can also give their recommendations on what they think needs to happen to change, to make a better sounding Toronto. And then lastly, all of the recommendations that come out of January 11th will be voted on by the mayor and city council in the week of February 6th to 8th. And after that, the noise bylaw will be done for however long it is. And if it's 20 years, that's a really long time. So I really think we have to make this the opportunity to make a difference. So one of the things that I wanted to do that's different is I wanted to look at noise. Just seemed to be an emotional argument. I got angry when I was woken up and I was grumpy and I needed to get up to go to work in the morning and I had only gotten to sleep at 3 in the morning. I was angry and I started to do research on noise, and what I saw in the data with the heat maps about how, the gardener's loud. Yeah, it's loud, but that wasn't the spikes that I was feeling and hearing. And so I was like, okay, I need to collect data, because data is what's going to help me understand this problem a little bit more. And so with that, I'd like to know a little bit more of data from you. So when the city had their consultations, They had four noise sources: amplified sound, construction, general noise, and motor vehicles. So I realize these buckets are not exhaustive, but what is, okay, so motor vehicles, there we are. So general noise is air conditioners. I had no idea that people are driven nuts by air conditioners, but I guess in the summertime, 24/7. And if they've got a little fan that's a little blade that's off and you've got that going all the time. Sirens, garbage trucks. Garbage trucks, this is an interesting little note, was during COVID, they allowed commercial garbage pickup 24/7. So you can have a garbage truck picking up outside your condo at 2 in the morning, and that's legal. That's okay because of this exemption that happened during COVID. Give me a break. Getting woken up by a garbage truck is just terrible in my mind. And anyways, so amplified sound was the other one that some people were talking about, but here I'm seeing, okay, I got one general noise, 17 motor vehicles, and construction. There we go, 7 of those. Interesting. Okay, if one of those buckets didn't work for you, please write down or enter into your phone, what is your most annoying noise source? Is it sirens? Is it leaf blowers? Is it backup beepers? Is it air conditioning? Is it a heat pump? Is it, for some people, children laughing? Boy racers, modified mufflers, you know, those, I don't know, supercars, honking. There we go. Honking is actually a lot of people. So in India, they tried to do a no honking day. I don't think that worked very well. False fire alarms, we have those too. Absolutely. Leaf blowers, dogs barking. There is somebody on the Not 311 noise report has reported a dog many times. Backup beepers, construct. So motorcycles, yeah. Motorcycles with those short little mufflers, right? Like the mufflers are usually, I think they're supposed to be about this big, and you see some of them and they're only like 6 inches. It's just like, oh my goodness. Modified mufflers. And those modified mufflers are illegal, folks. That's the thing. That is what makes it absolutely annoying. I'm seeing my idiot neighbor in here. Engines, false fire alarms, silence of electric cars. Interesting. Exotic cars, yes. Yorkville has a real problem with exotic cars. Holy smokes, I was there doing some sound level measurements. Those are loud. Okay, interesting. All of these results get saved, and so they will be shared out. 35 responses, thank you for that. So now I get to bring up Ryan. So Ryan is a senior geography student from U of T, and I was lucky enough that he chose No More Noise Toronto as his professional work experience. So let me just bring this back up here and pop this into presentation mode. Where are we? There we go. Nope. My ribbon is gone here. There we are. Am I sharing that screen? No.
I think you'll need to go into
Share. Share.
I think I think you'll have to stop share and then share it and then share over again. Just switch it over.
There we are. Oh, no. Go on Zoom. There we are. See, it's a good thing that. There we are. See? All right, we'll go along with that. See, it's this menu that gets hidden for me. There we are. Okay, I'll bring this down. All yours.
So, hello everybody. My name is Ryan. I'm happy to be here and speak with you guys today about No More Noise Toronto.
Here we are.
Okay, so who am I? So as Ingrid mentioned, I'm a 4th year student at U of T. I'm from the geography department, and so I had the chance to take a course where we basically get some professional experience working with somebody, and I chose Ingrid. Her project really interested me, and so some of my interests include geospatial analysis. So that's the stuff I'm doing with Ingrid. I like to do GIS and remote sensing, but more so from the drone and UAV perspective. And then I like making maps with the data that I collect. And so building off what Ingrid mentioned, what No More Noise Toronto is, and so what we're really trying to do is map out the urban noise pollution sort of crisis in Toronto, as well as in other cities. We're trying to understand what the effects of noise are on public health and your overall quality of life, and then basically trying to get a better night's sleep. And so we were lucky enough to have somebody from Civic Tech before who was helping Ingrid with her work. And so what I'm really doing is building off what the volunteer did. We're trying to adapt a non-spatial analysis into a spatial analysis, being able to sort of map out the data, visualize it, because, you know, as people say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so that's what we're trying to do. So here are some, what we've been focusing on recently is using weather data to sort of enrich our existing data from not 311 reports. And so what we've been identifying as the main sort of phenomenon is that reports and loud occurrences are occurring on days with no rain, or whether the conditions are not as wet. And so you can see on the graph over there, nearly 3/4 of the noise reports are on days that are clear, they have no rain, and then in contrast with days that do have rain, it's very small. So this here is a heat map that we created in Python, sort of just focusing on the top left here of the heat map. We see that most of the reports are occurring in the middle of the night. And so this is a sort of a concern where people are trying to get a good night's sleep and they can't because, you know, we have people sort of making noise during the night with the mufflers, as you guys mentioned, the multimeter. And then over here, the final graph here, what we sort of analyzed is most of these noisy reports are coming on the weekend. And so folks like to, you know, drive around the expressway, make the noise on the weekends where it's not as busy. And this also occurs during the night. So yeah, these are some examples of what we've really been doing in Python and GIS sort of to get the data and make a clear picture of what we want to see.
Yeah. And then we're going to go into, I'm just going to escape out of this, and then we're going to go back into, is this all still sharing? No, we now need to, you want to manage that? There we go. Excellent. I love help. It is just collaborative efforts are great. So thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that. So Ryan was talking about the data that we collected from our crowdsourced not 311 noise report. And the reason why I created this not 311 noise report is 311 does not take all noise reports all the time. That garbage truck that is legal at 2 in the morning, you can't complain about that because it's allowed. Leaf blowers at noon, you cannot complain about those. Literally, the functionality will not let you. So that's why I created the not 311 noise report. And I'm just going to hop over to that website. I'm hoping that that actually then comes up. Yes. Okay. So if you want to know more, this is my website. You can sign up for Noise News here, and each one of these is basically a like a story map, so which is an Esri product that gives a little bit more detail on each one of those items. But here's the 311 noise report page, not 311 noise report page. So we've got 3 forms, 3 surveys. All of them contain location, noise source, time, and annoyance. The long one has duration and frequency because people that want to log amplified sound and aircraft want to have those 2 items. So we've got 8,645 noise reports, which was pretty amazing. When you start off at 1 and you get to this amount, I'm pretty happy with this, I must say. And so here are some of the data that Ryan and I have been pulling on and pulling out. So the large green, so noise source 5%, large green slice is vehicle or small engines at 83, over 83%. What made the other noise? Well, that big yellow slice is loud pets and barking dogs. And there's lots of others. As we saw before, there's lots of different noise sources. When we look at cars, it's generally 1 car that makes the noise, and it's due to modified mufflers and exhaust. So all of that is ringing true. And leaf blowers, you know, there's a group called Gas Busters, and they're just this great group of people. But you can see where they live. And we wanted to do a leaf blower report because you cannot report these during the day. And so I wanted to make sure that we highlighted it because we just got through leaf blower season. And we've got 440 leaf blower reports, and they generally hear them for 1 minute to an hour. So leaf blowers are quite the thing, quite the deal, I must say. And the city is working to ban them, and which is good because they are heavily polluting, as well as damaging to the environment. So the other thing that we've been doing is I take weekly measurements with the sound level meter. So that's what they look like. They are made in Canada, kind of by Convergence Instruments, and I can do some data analysis from those. So this is a chart of time is along the bottom, decibels are along the side. And I pulled this at the end of November, and I was looking at that. So the green line is the noise floor. So that is how quiet it is, or the ambient sound level. And then the spikes are obviously how loud it got during that second. So you can see that there's some 90 decibel spikes. This was on the 6th floor off of not an arterial road, but a road that kind of, it has a bridge going over the Allen Expressway. So it is used as an arterial road. And we were looking at this going, wow, look at that drop. What's that all about? Well, that's what a rainy night can do. Literally, this is what it was like. Oh, and this correlated exactly with a rain, drizzle, fog event. So I look at the weather, and when it's quiet or when it's rainy, I know I'm going to get a better night's sleep. And then this is another chart where I can actually count the peak noise spikes. It counts them for me, I should say. So this is from Victoria Park in Danforth, and this is a snip of 3 days. And you can see the dips. So the orange is the average, is the LEQ over that time. And then I chose, so it had a decibel level of 70. Was their average for the week. So I went 10 decibels above to 80, and I counted those. And that's how I'm trying to devise a formula to understand how many noise spikes on average happen in certain areas. And in this example, these guys have 1,300 noise spikes on a weekly basis above 80 decibels. And some of them, they're at night, they're during the day, they're at all times. This is another example of a different meter that I have. And I like showing this chart because this shows the difference between, so this is taken off the Gardner, when the Gardner was closed for the Ride for Brain Health. And you can see where it was closed because the average is that much lower. And you can see all of those spikes that suddenly show up versus when the highway opens again, they kind of hide under that high. It's almost like a high water mark, like a dam. And so this is when I saw the heat maps, and I looked and I was just like, 80 decibels doesn't actually show what I live with. When they closed the highway and I could see those spikes, I thought, that is what I live with. And that is what many people live with. And that orange line is 45 decibels. That's where we're supposed to be sleeping at night. I don't get there. So what we wanted to do, thanks to Ryan and Esri, we created a buffer analysis to start to understand exposure. And I'm going to walk you through this here. So this is a map of Toronto with the wards. Then what we did is we took the highways, and we took 750 meters off of the highway in either direction. And we were able to overlay 2021 census data, and over 665,000 people live within 750 meters of a highway. And over 24 hours, they average 43 noise spikes over 80 decibels. So that's one driver can have that many impacts on a person. And when one person does a loop, they have literally impacted 665,000 people. What about arterial roads? People tell me, well, Ingrid, if you don't like, if it's noisy by the highway, go move somewhere else. Well, arterial roads are just as bad, if not worse. So we did another buffer analysis, and this was how many people live within 100 meters off of an arterial road, and that's 1.2 million people. And arterial roads are worse because you have places where the lights go red and there's actually no traffic. So it actually, that drops that noise floor right down. And so you have this, and then boom, all of a sudden it goes again. Well, with the highway, you always have some sort of road, wind, tire noise. So arterial roads are actually worse with 142 noise spikes over 80 decibels. So in combined, you have over 66% of Toronto's population is severely impacted by peak noise events on a regular basis. And so to me, that validated everything that I felt and heard and what I'm hearing from people. So what's next with the Toronto Noise Bylaw is we're actually going to be doing some training with people. If you have never spoken to committee or wanted to, or just are curious about it, on Saturday from 12:30 to 1:30, my friends from Cycle Toronto are going to help provide a little bit of deputation training, as it's called. And then before January 11th, we're going to have a media and email campaign. I'm going to try and make it as easy as possible for people to get involved. Click send, send an email, add your own noise story if you like. And then January 11th is the day. This is our opportunity to make a difference, because this is when we can speak to the committee. And then between January 11th and February 5th, we're going to have an email campaign. Again, and this is then for people to email their councillor and the mayor. So I want to flood their inboxes is my goal. So what you can do, sign up for Noise News, visit nomoreNoiseToronto.com. That is the way to be informed. And I promise you can put me on mute after February. Once this is all done, you can mute Ingrid and you won't hear from her again with Noise News. If you're still interested in noise, you can afterwards, but I recognize that people have very full inboxes. If you have some money, but you don't have time, you can consider donating to the Small Change Fund or to a Less Noisy Toronto through my partners at the Small Change Fund. All of that money is going to a media campaign so that I can get out of my echo chamber. And then send emails. That is, if none of those, if those other two things don't work for you, sending emails to city councillors and the mayor, and again, showing up on January 11th is super important. And so with that, I'm going to say thank you. I will absolutely take questions. And but in the meantime, I do have one more question for you. I started off with, what do you want Toronto to sound like? So now you can put your answer in. I asked this at a in-person event, and when I went up on stage, and people had no clue. They were like, what do I want Toronto to sound like? I don't know. Birds, you know. They kind of came up with birds or children laughing, but it sometimes takes a little bit of time to think about what we actually want our city to sound like. People-centered noise, absolutely. People in music, nice. So I'm just going to let that populate. You guys can take your time and think about what you would like Toronto to sound like, but I'm very happy to take any questions or thoughts or comments. In the meantime, I'll leave that up.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.
So we will take questions. If you have a question for Ingrid or Ryan and you're online, then you can put a Q in the chat and we'll call on folks in that order. And we'll take a look for folks online first, and then we'll kind of go back and forth between online. So I guess, Adam, are there questions from online?
Two. One, Priya Patel asked, what was the motivation for this work?
It looks like I'm seeing a cue from John. Sorry?
But there was, before you put your thing in.
Okay, sorry. Hey, sorry about that. We had you on mute. So I apologize for that. I forgot to turn that off. Yes. Who's up, Adam?
There's a question from Priya Patel that came just before mine and John's question, which was, what was the motivation for this work?
I want a better night's sleep. The motivation was actually during COVID, when the streets were really quiet and I could hear birds, and I suddenly literally felt the stress come out of my body, and it was like, wow, okay, we can achieve this in our cities. Now that might have been a little bit too quiet for some, but it certainly gave me perspective. And also just hearing that one engine, that one motorcycle, that one time, and I thought, how many people just got woken up like I did? So that was my motivation.
And my question, and then we'll go to the others, is um is there any science on why it's quieter on rainy nights other than less people joyriding? Is there something with the water that actually dampens the sound?
Yeah, there's people in this room that could probably answer this question actually better than I can. But yeah, so when you have moisture gets in the way of sound moving. And so it can limit that if am I saying that right, Nick? But also it changes how people drive. And I think that is the biggest thing, even though sound may not move as far in a moist environment with fog or snow or that kind of thing, people behave differently. And I think that's one of the biggest things with noise is it comes from behavior, not just the engine itself. It comes to how it's driven and how it's been modified.
Okay, and we'll quickly go to John and then we'll take some from the room.
Thank you.
Okay. As one of the one thing that you that I'm not sure you did, that you didn't talk about anyway, is Toronto has at least two major railway lines running through it, and actually several. And those railway lines right now generate an awful lot of noise, and then they are an interesting problem because they can be mitigated. The noise from railway lines can be mitigated somewhat more easily than cars or other or road noise. But I just wondered if there were any avenues for approaching Metrolinx and CPR and CN to do something about that.
Wouldn't that be lovely? Hey, those are regulated federally. And so that would be another battle. But so I learned that in Montreal, the streetcars have rubber wheels. Did you guys know that? I didn't. And it's like, but here we've got steel wheels. So there are ways that we can mitigate with the equipment that we have now. And so, or modifying the equipment that we have now. So I think, John, to your point, I know Lake Shoreline, like they talk about electrification and all of that. That's a long way in coming. And that will only reduce engine noise. You still actually have the train moving on the tracks. So from here, once the City of Toronto bylaw review is over and I get a little bit of a break and maybe go somewhere quiet for a while, I'm planning on looking at this from a federal and provincial level, because noise should be up in the Environmental Protection Act. It is in the Ontario, it's in the provincial legislation, it's not in the federal. And if noise is the #2 urban health hazard right after air pollution, according to the World Health Organization, we need to address it because our cities are getting more dense and we are getting more stressed and impacted, and our health is suffering because of that. So I don't know, John, if that answered all your questions there, but more to come on the rail, I think, and airports as well.
We're a little short on time, but let's take a couple questions in the room. Does anyone have a question in the room? Great. Please wait for the mic to.
Hi. So in previous cities where I lived, I know that the city didn't take noise complaints around engine noise at all seriously. They were only concerned about music or humans making noise loudly. Is that an issue already in Toronto? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Was hoping.
Yeah. So okay, there we go. So what the problem is that we are told to call 311 for everything. But the problem is that if you want to do a moving vehicle violation, they will say, thank you very much for the report. Your case is closed. Please call the Toronto Police. And then the Toronto Police want you to have a picture. They want you to have a license plate and they want you to have a story. And it's 3:30 in the morning and I just got woken up in my condo. That ain't going to happen. So there's some real disconnects in the actual 311 process and the reporting of the issues. And that's one of my things that I'm looking to bring forward during this noise bylaw review is fix the process. You're never going to get good data if you have a bad process. Thank you.
You mentioned that modified mufflers are illegal. Is that municipal, provincial, or federal?
Great question. So the question is about modified mufflers. So when vehicles are tested off the line federally, when they're made in Canada, they are tested for 82 decibels. Apparently electric vehicles and imports need to come under that. What happens is that when the vehicle gets on the truck and goes to the province, then the law changes and it becomes there shall be no the exhaust system shall operate as initially intended. So that means so modifications are illegal. And the thing is that Toronto police could visually see that big honking 4-inch pipe hanging off the back and go, that's a modified muffler, but they don't. So there's a problem in that part of the process as well.
Take one last question.
Yeah, thanks, Ingrid. This was really helpful. I'm sort of curious about the advocacy part. Why does it look like even with all of this data, you still have to put in a lot of work trying to get this passed through? Like, what's the climate like in City Hall?
So the climate at City Hall, I had an in-person event that had Councillor Shelley Carroll do the opening remarks, and Councillor Lily Chang from Willowdale was part of the panel. And Councillor Carroll talked about incrementalism and that they move so slowly and they just don't, they would love to do a pilot of noise cameras, but they need to get permission from the province, and the province gives them no response on either allowing for pictures of license plates or increasing fines. So there's this whole aging process that is just like, it's not moving forward. And we need political will is what we need. We need people who are willing to say to the car culture, you can't do that anymore, that the Toronto police needs to actually enforce those tickets, but there also needs to be transparency in the data. You know, I can't find the Toronto Police Services on the open data portal for how many noise infractions they actually had and how many citations they issued. There's a Freedom of Information request for that, but it's really hard. And we have been taught for years or decades, don't worry about noise, you'll get used to it. You'll get used to it. And the answer is now we know we don't get used to it. So in ways, I'm kind of starting a new battle in some ways. And I'm really relieved that people are starting to understand noise. New York City, Toronto looks to New York City a lot. They had 7 noise cameras in operation. Last week, they voted to put 5 more in each borough. And those are cameras that take pictures of cars and issue tickets. That's what we need in Toronto, but we need a whole bunch of people to show up and say, this is important, because if people don't show up, then, you know, so it's a bit of both. We need to show up and they also need to respond.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Civic Tech. It's been great.